keyboards that randomly stop working in the two.
What's up, Sean?
Hey, how's it going?
I'm alright.
So you got a sweet demo today?
What's that?
You got a sweet demo today?
No. No. I did say that. I said that probably like 6 weeks ago. I've been learning a lot and publishing or capturing that stuff really as data dumps in my blog. But what can I do? How do I share my screen? Share. So that's not it. I don't have anything to demo, but what I was going to say is,
Holy levels of indentation.
where is this courier service right here?
Does that happen a lot in F Sharp where you get that much level of indentation going on?
Let me go to what you're talking about. Hold up. What file was I on before?
Courier dispatch service.
So why is this indented so far? Because we're requesting a courier based on some order that's coming in. First is we're using this function as an interpreter for a specification, which is this right here. Specification is we're taking an order and we need to return some type of result. And so the way you implement the specification, which is analogous to an interface, is you can use the syntax right here. Else, if you don't do that, then what you end up doing is you just really have this right here, but you're not able to map it in a compiler fashion to a specific interface.
So it's just you're
So that's the
typing
first.
it to the delegate type or whatever.
I'm not confident in that term, but
Like request courier is a function type, right?
yeah. So
Yeah.
in OOP terms, it's an interface, but yeah, it's a function type.
Or it's closer to a delegate probably then.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so
Nobody uses delegates. No, not nobody. People don't use delegates in C# very much. At least not the non-generic ones. They use func and action all the time, but you can
What's the difference between a delegate and an interface? I thought a delegate was someone that you delegate to perform a task.
Yeah. Well, a delegate is an interface abstractly, but an interface has a different term for it. So if you do like public interface, you're describing the interface to some sort of class or struct that's going to have that interface, right? But delegate, you're describing the inputs and outputs of a function or a procedure or whatever. So
sounds the same to me, but okay.
Yeah, they're very similar. So like in C#, if you do like public interface, customer service, and then you have like a get customer that returns a single function that method or whatever that is takes a customer ID and returns a customer object, right? So that's an interface. If you do public delegate customer get customer ID, that's a delegate. They're very, very similar, but one describes a function as a type. The other one describes an interface to a class or a struct or whatever.
Yeah. So to answer your question, is this something that's more common in F#? With my limited experience of I think going on like 4 or 5 years, I would say yes, because if you look at this, besides the implementing the function type as well as the wrapping it in a async computational expression, you'll see that the more nested it becomes is pretty much a result of pattern matching. So we pattern match starting with this right here, and if that's successful, then we execute some statements, and then we pattern match some more. This right here,
Yeah.
right?
Can you sub function that out though? Just extract those functions and do it, or do they rely on state above them?
Uh,
Contextual state.
so I think you can. The first thing that comes to my mind is railway oriented programming that
Mhm.
Scott Blashin had, I guess made popular, in which you're taking the result of a function and you're automatically binding it to another function. Um, the short answer is I think you can. I'm just not going to do it.
That's all right. I was just curious. I saw like I don't know what it got down to there. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 14 degrees of indentation. I'm like, wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
I have some
So
C# stuff that I don't think I ever let it get that deep. So I was just curious if that's a common thing or not.
so for the short answer is when doing pattern matching in operation, I could see that happening. Outside of railway oriented programming, and I'm not even sure if that would even address this, which I think it would, because the whole point of railway oriented programming is to, at least my understanding is, um, continue to call functions as long as the previous functions were successful. And so instead of nest for everything that is successful, you have more of a linear flush line of functions that will only execute if the last function was successful, and you don't have to do any nesting like that. I wish I could show you an example, but I don't have any right now. Yes, I'm at the point I don't really care that much. Yeah, I mean
It's
this
all
is
good.
like uh, this is a complicated function, but
No,
it
I believe it. I
yeah.
wasn't necessarily critiquing it as much as just curious about if this is just common in F# or not. So I've been getting a little bit more interested in picking up F# lately, and I think it's today the 28th. Yeah, I'm thinking about there's a kind of a week-long game jam that I've been meaning to do for probably the last 4 years that I haven't done, and since I'm going to miss the one I'm doing later this year, uh, uh, I was thinking of doing that and using it as an excuse to dive into F#. But if you have to have that level of indentation, well, I'm not going to do it then, damn it.
No, I mean that's a courier dispatch operation, so there's a lot of IO going on,
Yeah.
um, between a courier mobile app and this particular service, and so yeah, there's just significant ceremony of
Yeah.
querying couriers that are within a 3 mile radius of the customer location that's making the request, to figuring out which couriers are actually available, to picking out the closest courier within proximity of that customer that doesn't have any orders or it has the least amount of orders that's currently in their pipeline. And it's a lot of ceremony to figure out who is going to dispatch to that particular customer.
Yeah.
So,
Fair enough.
um,
But you were going to demo something anyways.
oh no, I was going to show some code that I wrote, but I've been chomping on it last night and this morning, and I know it's not going to work because I haven't plugged it into my customer app yet. So basically what I've been working on, and everything has been like integration, right, with Azure, is customer places an order, courier dispatch selects a candidate courier. In the event that that courier accepts that request, then then what happens is the courier service will then generate a whole bunch of courier topics for that particular request ID. It'll then publish a message, which I haven't implemented yet, this part of publishing a message that the customer is subscribed to, that will, the customer app, that will tell the customer app, hey, topics have been generated for these specific courier events, such as estimated time of arrival, arrived at pickup location, leaving pickup location, arrived at drop-off location, dropped off, all that stuff. And so when the customer app receives a notification that topics have been created for this specific courier in regards to their request order, then the customer app is going to, now that those topics exist in Azure because they're created dynamically, the customer app is then going to subscribe to those events. And then those events get triggered from the courier service. And then the customer is able to observe UX updates based on each event, such as customer en route, customer arrived, pickup, customer leaving the pickup location because they're en route to the drop-off location, all that stuff. So that's what I've been working on. Did any of that make sense? Or
you're gonna be a wizard at Azure Service Bus when this is all done.
Well, my goal is to, real talk, my goal is to be the technical authority in the state of Florida for order fulfillment, and to basically zero in on that specific business domain so I can charge $150 an hour, because I have written the infrastructure, the code that I could like pull in to address that. And so while you have a whole bunch of other developers that they understand C# syntax or just software engineering, I won't even call it engineering, they know how to write OOP code, whether it's in Java or C#, like, hire me so that you can have confidence that I've already done this, right? This is more than me having Azure experience or Java or C# experience. This is me understanding this specific domain because I've already done it single-handedly. I've ran into all the issues. You are paying me the rate that I want because I've already made those mistakes and I already know what not to do. Hence the definition of experience. So that's kind of like my revelation now. Is like, I really want to get into this domain. Second part of that is, I think I told you last Friday, after this whole beach delivery implementation, I'm pivoting to essentially build the Amazon version of a mobile delivery e-commerce app, meaning that create a marketplace within the mobile platform for order fulfillment, and have sellers register and input their products or services, and then have buyers perform a search, find a suite of sellers or a set of sellers, and then based on ratings and whatever other type of ranking algorithms, an order is made, and then my infrastructure on the back end is executed, and I just sell subscriptions, and also I take a percentage of the actual transaction. So I'm making leeway. I just got to get the speech delivery like up and running. And once that gets solidified, the next step is to implement a um, multi-tenancy support or whatever, multi-tenant support, whatever the word is. Then I'm able to then bounce back to the front end and then create a completely different mobile app that's a platform. So yeah, I'm stressed out, but I've learned a lot.
Cool. You still you got a day job still? Is your
Yeah,
fitness around?
I didn't get fired yet. I have an interview today that I'm really interested in. So it's supposed to be a phone screen for half an hour, and I'm like, nah. Like, I like what you guys are doing. Half an hour isn't enough for me to demonstrate how I could deliver value to you and your customers. I need an hour, and I don't want to do a phone screen. I want to do a video conference. I want to share my desktop, right? If we're going to be serious, let's be serious. So I'm not sure if they're going to accept those terms and conditions, but that's at 11. So
Cool.
I'm on it, man.
Is it with for an Azure type?
No,
Xamarin?
this is a Xamarin. This is a Xamarin position, but I'm trying to position myself to get out of the business of being a UI developer. I'm trying to position myself into being a solutions like integrator. Like, I want to sell solutions to people. Like, I don't want to be part of all these other peasants, either only doing like front end or only doing back end. Like, I want you to hire me as if I'm a government contractor, and I'm just going to build you the solution, and that's it. So I really want to get out of this pigeonhole of you are a Xamarin developer, or you are a I don't know, a web API. I'm done with that. I want to be hired to just what do you need? What are your pain points? All right, this is what I could do for you, and like, I'm trying to graduate to that level.
You need an organization then around you.
How do you say his name? You know how to pronounce that comment? So there's a person that commented. I can't say his name though. At least his first name, which most companies were like that. I mean, really like investigating their potential future hires. Yeah. Well, I think the issue is the majority of companies, they know what they want. Like, this industry needs to be disrupted because your staffing agencies, they are barely ahead of the actual customers that need help. And so, like, you said Celtic name. I don't know what that means.
Celtic name, not Celtic.
I thought it said Celtic. It says Celtic.
Well,
CELTIC. No?
It's pronounced Celtic unless you're referring to the Boston Celtics.
How is Celtic spelled?
It's the same. It's just
okay.
In Boston. if you're the Boston Celtics, spell it that way, and they're pronounced that way. But in every other context, it's Celtic.
Well, won't that be a K then?
No.
Okay.
Well, maybe more anglicized it would be, but Celtic is a kind of like a Irish, Scottish area type historical tribe or whatever. So the Celts. But,
so is that why Boston Celtics is green, as like kind of in relation to Irish colors?
Yeah, that's all basically related. And Boston had a huge influx of Irish people, so. But the Aaron.
What?
Aaron. But yeah, anyways.
As far as the
name. Yeah.
I thought you were foaming at the mouth or something like that.
No. Oh man. Yeah, I mean, I can understand that there's an initial phone screening just to, because if let's say if you're going through 100 candidates or whatever, and you're trying to just weed out people. It doesn't take an hour. I don't need to know everything about you just to know if there's to get that very first thing that says, nope, this person's not it type deal.
I get that, but my job is to dominate and remove all competitors. So my job isn't to help you filter out candidates and help you get other people that are going to compete with me on that contract. My job is to say, this is the one, and that's it.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying your side's wrong, but I got it right. Aaron. Gosh, the last part's really hard. Aaron, because I wonder if it's like a close relation to Aaron, but maybe not. Anyways.
Yeah. So like, I'll probably have to get my blog or get a website done maybe in 6 months that will like be SEO enabled, in which when people type in order fulfillment software, like I'm on the first page.
It's like I'm just gonna say it'll be like Bismonger, Scott Nimrod, order fulfillment, SAP,
Oh yeah, all the buzzwords.
Microsoft Dynamics, UPS Logistics or something. Salesforce, yeah.
Is that what Salesforce focuses on?
No, they're CRM, so they focus on customer relationship management. So, but yeah.
So, like I said last night and this morning, I've been writing hell of Azure code to programmatically create service bus topics, and I mean it's interesting. The only thing I like about C# is their method extensions. It's the only thing I like.
Yeah, there was a podcast I listened to with, I think it was Matt Torgesons or something, and he was talking about how they were exploring extensions, everything. And I haven't seen it come through on any of the C# specs or not, but it got me really excited because extension methods are make a lot of stuff in C# really easy and nice. Not testing though, but
yeah. So
it's annoying when you're trying to test around them.
Is it? How? It's a static method.
When you have an interface that's mocked, that you're trying to mock out, and it's and you're using extension methods on that mock, then it becomes kind of a pain in the butt. Because you can't specify, like in your mocking library, you can't say, hey, mock out the extension method. You have to mock out the underlying method, which isn't the method you're using. So.
Oh, yeah, you're using mocking frameworks. Like, I don't do that. I
don't want to do that. What I really want to do is set up more like a fake. I don't know. It bothers me that of testing like individual units and stuff. In terms of like small little methods and stuff, because I can pretty well understand when those are going to go wrong. What I want to do is I want to test like scenarios at the kind of like macro level. This happened. This is the state before I did this, and then this is the result state. But through the entire app, with the boundaries faked or whatever. But man, it's. I hate testing. You know what? Why unit testing probably makes things more stable? It's because people are too afraid to frickin' change anything because it's so much damn work to do it.
Yeah, I agree. So, like, here's a method extension. If I go back, you have this request, which is a record, right? Or a record value, generate topics, and like this is what I do over here. And then the create topic that it relies on is this over here. And I have this Azure topic.create async, which is essentially a whole bunch of CRUD operations over here. I don't know, this stuff, I enjoy writing it. All right. I'm starting to hate doing UX. I think I just want to do backend. But anyways, I like method extensions, man. It makes things look simple. So
yeah, again, enable a lot of really cool stuff too. Like you don't have to, necessarily saturate your actual object or whatever with a bunch of methods to do a bunch of stuff. You can just have this extra deal that kind of separates out things you're building on top of it. But yeah, I don't know.
So that's it. That's what I've been up to. I'll see if I could do a demo next Friday. I've been saying that for like the last 5 weeks.
Well, next Friday's the day it's gonna happen, I believe. Well, you're demoing a heck of a lot more than I am, so so cheers on that.
Again, what's annoying me is I keep getting phone calls from New Jersey or California, and they're always like Indian staffing agencies that somehow have U.S. numbers. And so I've been getting a lot of, since I updated my resume, I've been getting calls for .NET microservices developer, or Java microservices developer. And what annoys me is like I thought that one of the tenets of microservices is that it's agnostic or should be agnostic when it comes to specific languages, right? Just based on the prefix micro, right? Which means that it should not be tedious to just rewrite it in a different language and or paradigm. And so I'm getting a lot of these phone calls, and I'm like, and the other part is like when I'm getting these phone calls for a specific language microservices developer, I'm like, all right, well, what business domain are they in? And they can't answer that for me. And the whole point of microservices is to address, I would argue, to address Conway's law, in which there's something that has complicated communication paths in which you want to remove those dependencies. You should know the business domain that you're calling me for.
Yeah, well, if it's a staffing agency, sometimes they don't want to give that information away for whatever
the business
reason.
domain, not the client. The
Oh,
business domain.
yeah. Oh, like is it healthcare or whatever?
Yeah.
Kind of deal.
Is it order fulfillment? Is it healthcare? And
They
what?
probably don't even ask. They just know these are the keywords I'm looking for.
Yeah.
It's annoying. Actually, you know what I wish I could do is I wish I could have that stuff available, but also list the things I don't want to work on.
You do it on Stack Overflow jobs.
Yeah, on Stack Overflow jobs you can, but on I don't think you can do it on LinkedIn. And so I get bothered because I get messages and I kind of like sometimes get a little excited, like, oh, this looks cool, and then I read Java. I'm like, nope, I don't even want to touch it. Like, I would not take a Java job unless I'm absolutely
Homeless.
Desperate. Yeah. I'm desperate. I would work. Like I'd be on the street sign, like we'll do Java for food or whatever. But that would be where it would have to be.
I want to see that sign. that would be a cool meme.
Yeah, but no, I mean, I have no interest in writing Java code because I would just be frustrated the entire time at how awful it is compared to C#. So, but I don't know. I really want my next gig to not be C# based. Like I want to try something new, whether that be F# or even something like Python, which I've done before. But I don't know.
It'd be easier for you to find a Python job.
Yeah, it probably is, but then again, I really like static type. Like I really like using the type system now. Like that, I've drank the Kool-Aid on how useful the type system is, and how I can just, if you're very explicit about everything, you can just make it so that your code's unstoppable. So,
I could understand that.
Yeah.
But I do think there's a fair argument with the combination emphasis on combination of TDD and dynamic languages.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough that you, like, it's a different way of doing it, but I mean, you're still adding it. You're still using something to validate that your stuff's correct. I mean, right? It's just a different way of doing it. I just types are just so much easier than testing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Unless it's a logic flow error, but then you need some tests. But that's why I like the broad integration tests. Like,
Yeah, the biggest lesson I've learned,
rows.
the biggest lesson I've learned for this particular project or passion project is next time around, I'm going to apply TDD on integration points of the software project, because it just takes too long to like cowboy your code with third party libraries and trying to figure out, well, why doesn't this work, and launching the application every single time to try to test and then try to troubleshoot why it's not working. Like, that stuff is just too tedious. Like, if it's not my code that I'm integrating with, it's a lot easier to just control RT. RT is run tests within your test project library. It's a lot faster just to do that. I mean, especially when you're doing like cloud stuff. So that's something that I'm definitely going to apply. Like, I used to be a TDD zealot, and then I stopped when I realized that it doesn't guarantee good design. It just almost guarantees that your code works, but not good design. But in regards to integration, like, I think I'm just going to use that workflow, because
Isn't that
that's taking me too long.
Isn't that the selling point of TDD though? Is that it does create good design?
That's what that people will say, that it's a design tool, but being a design tool doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to encourage good design. It encourages decoupled architecture or decoupled code. But if your workflow is red, green, refactor, and you're just writing enough code for it to go from red to green, that to me doesn't sound like it's going to result in good design. To me, that sounds like it's resulting in code that adheres to a checklist. It could be tedious, right? So
yeah. Oh, it's definitely tedious. I don't know. Like, yeah, go ahead.
So here's a example, right? So if I share my screen and I go to business code kata. So this business rules kata, if you try to do this doing TDD, I promise you're not going to have a good design. And those are strong words, but I promise you, right? And so it's when you start having all these, and this is too long for me to read, but when you're implementing some domain that has weird rules only based on specific things occurring. So, like, for example, buy two get one free, or if you buy a book and you buy a video, then your shipment is 10% off. But if you buy a book and two videos, your shipment is more percentage off. And then you start having all these different combinations that have a different result. You're essentially implementing some type of compliance with a checklist. And it's not, and you're going to end up having all these different if conditions based on all these different specials that are going on that may or may not change next week. And my argument is TDD doesn't lead to a good design for that. Now, I did this kata, and I failed miserably when I was trying to do TDD because I just had bloated code all over the place. And then you're familiar with Mark Seaman?
Yeah.
So then he code reviewed my stuff, which was like, it was probably like 100 lines, and he did it in like 10 lines. And then that led me to the conclusion that TDD doesn't dictate good design based on my personal experience, which may be different from yours.
Yeah, I don't. I've done it a few times, but I get frustrated with it because it feels like I'm going so slow, just slow.
I thought I'm not sharing my screen anymore, right?
Yeah, maybe it's just because I don't get into a lot of places. Yeah, you are sharing still. I don't get into a lot of situations where there's a ton of logic like that, where it's competing and things like that. There's precedents and all that stuff. Like I feel like it when you're writing, because every freaking TDD thing you write is like you see is about writing some sort of algorithm for something. And I could understand, like I've done test driven development for writing a difficult algorithm to write, where I have specific inputs, I'm looking for specific outputs, but I don't know how the internals of it are supposed to work. But if it's just like a CRUD app type thing, and I'm just pulling in data, and if this right here, and if not, then do this, and it's so friggin' obnoxious to do that kind of style of testing.
Yeah, that's where we disagree, because especially when it's an integration point, you now are interfacing with an external system that you're now pushing state onto, that usually you're going to get wrong the first time you execute it. And now you have this modified state that you need to clean up again. And so you're manually cleaning it up just to launch your application again, go through the UX of the application that you're on to get to that point to, again, execute that integration point. And that's the part where it's like, it's just too slow.
Well, yeah, but the thing is for me, I have to do that anyways. Even if I were to do test-driven development, I don't have any confidence that that's actually going to work when it's integrated, ever.
No, but you have confidence that the specific integration test that you wrote works, and it should always work as long as you have setup, test, verify, and tear down, which is always important.
Yeah, if we're talking about end-to-end integration tests, that's different. Like I wouldn't mind doing a couple broad integration tests like that. That's different from what we're told to do in terms of, don't write a single line of code until until you have a failing test for it. Like that's different.
Yeah.
The other one includes real life, into it, like stuff goes down and stuff is slow and whatever. And you have, sometimes you'll have dependency injection containers or compositions that you have to do and deal with, and frameworks that you may or may not know how to use correctly, that you can abstract away all day long, but if you get the configuration wrong on them, you're screwed. And all of those things can mess up your thing. So a full-on integration test, if you're writing an automated test that does the portion that you would do manually, that's great at a macro level. But I just this little just tedious, like I know how to write logic. I can see, I can read it, and there's not a lot of times where I get it's tiny little logic error wrong, and it happens, but it's really easy to fix too, and really easy to find. So.
Well, okay. So that's not always the case. It seems like I'm always disagreeing with you today.
Yeah. No. So
but here's a prime example. dynamically generating Azure topics on the fly, right? I didn't have to say on the fly because dynamically already suggests that. Okay. And so I have client applications and I have backend services, multiple on both sides, right? Front and back, that are relying on some form of a contract or convention of a topic name will always have this format. Okay. Format will be, for example, courier dash and then whatever action, such as accepted, declined, forfeited, ETA, whatever, right? Format is courier and then dash and then whatever action or status. And then within parentheses, a request ID that they're working on, which is in the form of a GUID. Are you still with me?
Yep.
Okay. So let's say that you have a customer app and a courier app. And then let's say that you have like 4 different backend services that are also relying on that particular message. What I'm explaining is a message that needs to be formatted that gets published, and both clients and other services subscribe to that message that rely on that formatted message. Okay. What I ran into was the convention that I was using. To me, it made sense. And then when I tried to test it out, I had an exception. Exception was that that formatted message name that I had, it can't exceed 50 characters, right?
Too long. Yep.
A GUID alone, right? If you just call it toString without having any type of code within your toString parameter, is going to be, I thought, 36 characters, right? That's just the string value of that GUID. And then you have that's 36 characters plus the left parenthesis, right parenthesis, 38 characters, and then whatever courier prefix that is attached to it, right? And so in my case, it's only an integration issue, right? Because I'm relying on a third-party system to perform work for me, and they have their constraints. And so I had to modify like all these different services to comply with one third-party, DLL, right? And so that's what I mean, where like it's not that straightforward, especially when you're building up hella infrastructure that have a reliance on something that you can't control. So I'm not sure.
Yeah,
if
no. Well, that just proves that's not against my point. Like I'm saying is that sometimes you don't know what you don't know about integration. When you run something, it can operate in a different way, in a way you didn't expect. I guess you're lucky that there were fixed names and that you didn't put it on something variable that then would break later on when you were testing something. But like you wouldn't have known that until you actually ran it.
Yep.
So I don't know what a unit test to make sure you got like across all of those 5 apps to make sure you got that you got the topic name correctly formatted would have done much for you. It's pretty obvious with a simple integration test, an actual integration test, or even like a user test, that this shit's just not working, and then you can figure out why.
Yeah.
But then if you decide to, change those topic names, you still have to go change them across every app. But I don't know then you're going to have to update the test across every other app too.
No, but my argument is, this is my argument. Not only do I say, oh, it exceeded 50 characters. Well, let me consolidate this name, right? Because you executed that code that modifies the state running on the external system, that state is still left over, right? Which means that subsequent times where you try to run the same code, there's a likelihood that that code, even when fixed, is going to have issues because you still have leftover modified state. So with a integration test, you're always going to have a teardown phase or a teardown stage that's going to perform cleanup. Whereas if you're manually running an application, going through the UX to finally execute the code that you want, you then, if you don't have a test, you have to use a separate tool, go into that system, whether it's Management Studio or some type of Explorer tool, to clean up that state. And it's just manually intensive, and that's hard.
Yeah. No, you're right about It's I broad integration tests, that test the basics and stuff, where it's actually doing that kind of work with the teardown and everything. That I can get behind that. I can see the value in that, because all I'm doing is automating the steps that I would have to do manually to test that stuff anyways. Which I'd still probably do anyways, because I can observe things that sometimes I don't have in the code. But what I don't like is the small little tests around just small little units of it that, 9 times out of 10, or even 99 times out of 10, 100, I'll get absolutely right the first time. And then the one time I get it wrong, the unit test will help. But then I'm stuck maintaining these little tiny little tests.
Well, okay. What's the unit test to you?
Yeah, see, that's the terminology we're probably discussing about is different. I'm talking about like the smallest possible unit, like method testing. On a thing, not full on integration. So, like, I think of unit like component, integration, user testing kind of a thing.
And I think that was
there's a crap ton of pyramids.
And I think that was probably the worst mistake that was meant to improve code bases and encourage discipline, is what they decided a unit test is, right? By definition of unit, it makes sense, but I feel like it's not being used the way that it's intended for software development. So for me, it doesn't make sense for me to say I need to have a method that I know my interface layer is going to rely on. And so I'm going to write this method, and I'm going to make sure that it passes. And I know I need this other method that is an implementation detail of this interface that users use, and I'm going to write this in isolation too, and I'm going to test it. Like, to me, I think it's just unnecessary overhead.
Yeah.
And so, but I mean, it's kind of like it's unit testing, but I don't think that's something that we should be focused on. So, like, for me, and people say, well, what I'm about to say is a unit test. All right, fine. It's an automated test that doesn't touch a database, or it doesn't touch an external system. Is on my controller or my view model, I write a suite of automated tests that target each operation that's exposed on that controller or on that view model.
Yeah,
that's
and
it.
It describes the scenario that you're trying to accomplish too, from a business or user perspective.
Yeah.
I had a thing yesterday where, like, I have a thing where basically you can move one object from one kind of structure to another, and when you do that, it's kind of got to maintain the certain state, and it's got to resubmit itself for to be looked at. And the thing is like, I want to describe at the user level that, what I want to test is that they move this from A to B, and then this is the effect on that, like, based on this. But what you're writing on these at these smaller levels is, like you said, implementation details. Like, it's not what I'm trying to accomplish as a user and making sure that that's working. It's, I passed in this ID and it sent a message to here, and it manipulated state like this.
Behavior.
Yeah, behavior, but it's not. It doesn't describe what I'm actually trying to solve with that behavior. It's just describing the behavior. So it's like documenting. It's kind of just like writing out what the code does, not what you're trying to accomplish with it. So, and even if you did try to write it at the level of what you're trying to accomplish, it might not make sense in that context, because it's just an implementation detail of a broader solution, right? So that's why I just like I hate the fact that we write tests, and people are so stringent about writing tests at that level. Like I want to write it at a broad level. And not for every freaking little edge case either, but for just like, does this do what I'm expecting it to do? And then make sure that doesn't mess up other things that other people expected the system to do.
Well, I'm guilty of the more tests that I write, the more productive I feel.
Yeah,
I brag, because if you write one test, then that means that you have an opportunity to write 2 additional tests that account for probably a minimal amount of edge cases, and you get that for free, because the first test, well, you already have that code, and now you're passing in a negative number, and now you're passing in a null, or now you're passing in something that your method should have issues processing. And so I'll just have this proliferation of unit tests, and I just feel so productive because I wrote so much code. In a way, it's like, I think it's good. And then like when I got introduced to property-based testing, then I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I don't have to manually write these tests anymore.
Yeah. I don't know. I just feel like I'm on the outside of testing now. Like I have a different opinion on it, and it's not the accepted norm. Like it's not the cult following of it that people have. It's
you take sides with DDD. What's his name? David DHH, David Hannemeyer Hansen, whatever his name is.
Was it TDD's dead one?
Well, his argument was test-induced damage, saying that if you're a zealot of TDD, then there's a strong likelihood that you're going to damage the design of your domain.
Yeah, sure. Kind of in line with like James Copland too?
I don't agree with almost anything he says.
No, I don't know. Everything he says a lot of what he says makes sense to me. So
I disagree with almost everything he says. Like I can't watch his videos. Like I just disagree so much with what he said. I'm like, what is he famous for? Like why does he have a stage to talk? Like
he's famous for disagreeing with people, but I don't know. I like that mode.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I get annoyed listening to him. Like that's how much he irks me. I'm sure he's way more intelligent than I am. I'm sure he's light years ahead of me in regards to building systems and stuff. But like what he says is, he has an opportunity to back it up in his videos, and I feel like he doesn't. He just makes blatant statements that I disagree with, and I get really angry.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, I've watched some of his videos, and he talks about how people don't back up what they say. Like they don't go into, how to, they don't have numbers behind saying, oh, you should write unit tests or whatever. There isn't like there isn't like the proof written out versus other options and things like that. People are just accepting stuff like, oh yeah, this is the way to go without any real factual or evidence based on it. It's all anecdotal.
It's dogma, it's religion. I get that. But one of the biggest things I disagreed with him about, he's like, and he was kind of like jabbing Uncle Bob. I don't like calling him Uncle Bob anymore. Is he was saying, he was like, oh, it's absolutely ridiculous to defer decisions all the way to the end. If anything, you want to make decisions before you have to deal with it. And I just disagreed with that so much because there's so many examples where personal examples based on my personal experience where like it was just a huge time waster to entertain certain topics that never occurred based on the duration of the software that was being built. Like there's something that you considered, but 2 months later, and based on requirements changing, you just it never happened because the business decided to zero in on in this direction, right? And so that's one example of things that I just completely disagree with that he like advocates and doesn't back it up. Oh, I would love to just debate him.
So we got another comment. I feel like James tries to convey the same with DCI, that the code should match the mental model of the end user.
What's DCI?
I don't know. DCI. Drum Corps International.
Why is I can't pronounce any of these names? What does show mean? Let me click on show. Oh, okay.
Whoa,
That's what it does.
that's kind of neat. That's a cool feature.
Remember they left it on by default, and I was like, I don't know how to get this thing off.
So this is the question we're looking at.
Yeah, what is data context interaction? Yeah, I would have never guessed that.
Yeah.
So I feel James tries to convey the same with data context interaction, that the code should match the mental model of it. Well, yeah, I believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he failed miserably at trying to convey that or trying to articulate that.
Yeah. Maybe he just needs to go through a softer, somebody convey his ideas through some other softer proxy who can because he is kind of a bit crass and
Eccentric
and eccentric, and eccentric. And there was one I watched where he had a T-shirt on that had a political statement on it. I couldn't get around it. A new vision of object-oriented programming. Or is that the video? Oh yeah, DCI architecture. Here we go.
I mean, isn't that always the case though? That the code base matches someone's mental model? Like, what's the alternative? And I'm not like jabbing at the viewer's comment, but a code is essentially the current thought of someone that they're placing on the editor. Like, regardless of how flawed or how noisy it is, it's someone's mental model. Or is that not the case? At my current job, I don't know. I think at everybody's job, you see code. You see like 1,500 line methods, and it's essentially a whole bunch of if conditions. And then you see the same if conditions at the end of the method that was like in the middle or beginning of it. And so maybe that can be the difference when I say, isn't it always someone's mental model, the code that they write? But I guess it's probably not, because now it's them just trying to get something done and just throwing slop at the editor to try to get the result that they need at the expense of the method being hella noisy or the code being hella I can't say the word, nosy, with a whole bunch of code that doesn't need to be there, and it leads you through rabbit holes. Can't talk right now. It leads you to a rabbit hole. It's totally aligned with the main function. Okay. Okay. So, are you going to? I guess we're going to wrap up now. Have you found a project? Are you going to find a project next week?
Maybe. I was going to say that last one Guillermo said was exactly what I was thinking when I was looking over this kind of document. And what he was saying is that it is really aligned with domain modeling made functional in terms of, you really document things in terms of the domain and the user interactions, and not and focus less on how you structure things in a using object oriented. But
Is that behavior driven? Isn't that BDD? Behavior.
yeah, I think they're all along the same lines.
Have you used PostSharp?
What?
Have you used not PostSharp? What's it called? What's the BDD framework for .NET? I can't remember. You're not familiar with BDD frameworks?
Not really. No. Is that like Gherkin and Cucumber and all those things? Right?
Yeah, SpecFlow. It's SpecFlow.
Oh yeah, SpecFlow. I've seen some of it. I've never used it because
Okay.
I hate every test. I hate it all.
All right.
Kidding. Yeah, no. Like I said, I might work on this. There's this. It's a game jam called 7 Day Roguelike, and I don't think I'd actually be able to finish a roguelike, but even if I could just get a little bit, I kind of want to learn F#, because like I said, I got to expand my language pool here and stuff, because I really would like my next gig to not be so not .NET, C# centric. It just feels like I'm getting to a point where I want to write code in a certain way, and the language is fighting me. So this would be, I just need some sort of complex thing I'm interested in, where there's enough complex logic that it's worth writing. In the language. So
you can help me and build this,
and that I'm interested in,
mobile order fulfillment domain model.
Yeah,
that's abstract enough for a marketplace for people to do services and products.
Now, the thing about roguelike games, though, is that there's a lot of you do procedural generation in a lot of it, and there's usually generally pretty deep rule sets and things like that, and some complicated algorithms you might have to write, like site algorithms, line of sight algorithms. So like when you put those together, there's a lot of code that you need to write that's not IO, which is something that I'd want. Like every project that I think of, like, oh, I want to learn F# with this, it's just a bunch of IO CRUD operations or whatever.
But that's still good, though.
It's like I could do that in C# with my eyes closed. I'm not going to learn much with it.
It's personally, I would say that your IO is still relevant and important in F#.
Oh, it is, but I want to learn the language using complex logic structures and things like that, and models, not necessarily through the IO aspect, which is just learning the interfaces and having to deal with configurations and how to use an API or whatever. So
because F#'s async library is probably a month worth of learning and practice.
Yeah, that's nuts. Like, it's so easy with C#.
I mean, because this is my first time. Like, no, I mean, it's once you understand it and experience all the different combinations of the various support that async and F# has, then you're good. I mean, it's the same thing with C# async await. But you're going to, if you don't have any experience with it and you haven't done anything like moderately complex or involved, then you're going to be banging your head against the wall for a while, like I've been doing for the past couple of months, because I've always just done like very simple, like await this, await that in F#. But now I have this huge like microservice backend with a whole bunch of ceremony all over the place, and I've learned more about F#'s async module than I've ever known, and it's been like 4 years since I've been writing it. So
cool.
That's my argument.
All right. Well, I probably should wrap it up then. So I might work on that for next week. Maybe I could show you some F# code, and then you could laugh at it.
Like you pointed at mine. the nested.
Look at all that indentation.
Yeah. I mean, I could post it and figure out how people would resolve it. I think like Stack Overflow has a code review part, right? So I could throw it in there.
It seems like you could just push it off into smaller functions, right? And then just at the root level, you still have the same branching structure, but it's spread across smaller functions. And that's what I do in C#. Just push it off to another sub function and close it.
So I mentioned railway-oriented programming.
Yeah.
But the thing is you're throwing it into small functions, but you still have to make the decision if the previous I/O operation, because that whole function that you saw is very I/O heavy, right? Mm-hmm. So you still have to have branches of did the last operation succeed or not.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's what you have.
Yeah, that's why I use monadic binding or whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
So, like we have a result type, and you can use we have a function called bind, and you can just pass in another thing that returns a result, and it just collapses the result into it. So it's probably very close to what you're talking about with the railway stuff. So then when you combine that with tasks, it's like task result maybe this thing. It's like and then in C# that's super verbose. So it's like four angle brackets around the thing you actually want. So kind of sucks. All right, I gotta run.
Been real. Yep. Enjoy your weekend. I'm gonna go to a conference tomorrow. So all right.
Sounds good. Bye.
Peace. Leave studio or in broadcast.